Okay, in the last video, I gave you the chromosome genetic disorders. Now let me give you the other. Let me give you some other disorders. I want to leave that up just because of that. And so now what I would like to do. Okay, now I'd like to. We just had a door issue there. Okay, so now let me give you some other genetic disorders. Cystic fibrosis. Okay, cystic fibrosis. What is cystic fibrosis? It's a glandular dysfunction that interferes with the mucus production. Breathing and digestion are hampered, resulting in a shorter lifespan. Okay, so cystic fibrosis. Okay, cystic fibrosis is actually where the glands. Okay, the glands that produce different things in mucus. It's kind of interesting because the mucous membrane that secretes into your esophagus and your throat and in your sinuses, okay, doesn't work, and it produces breathing and digestion problems, resulting in shorter lifespan. So what is cystic fibrosis? It's a glandular dysfunction, often associated with the secretion of mucus. Now, diabetes, okay, we hear a lot about diabetes. The body does not produce enough insulin, okay, which causes bad metabolism to break down sugar. So, once again, I'm talking about the genetic diabetes. Now, we have onset diabetes, we have juvenile diabetes that can actually be caused from somebody who takes in too much sugar, so much sugar that the insulin can't keep up with it. But the genetic diabetes is where we don't produce enough insulin. Then we have hemophilia, and that's delayed blood clotting. And somebody that's a hemophiliac, their blood doesn't clot properly, sometimes known as a free bleeder. And so in this case, the problem is not a cut on the outside, the problem is a cut on the inside or a bruise that could keep going and we wouldn't see the problem. Then we have Huntington's disease. Okay, Huntington's disease is a central nervous system begins to deteriorate. And then it causes problems with muscle coordination and muscle deterioration. So in Huntington's, the central nervous system, the nerves that come out of the spinal cord and go from the brain begin to disintegrate. So Huntington's is a pretty serious genetic one. And then we have PKU. Okay, PKU is and we actually test for PKU in babies. We look for this. It's a metabolic, a metabolic disorder that causes mental retardation. And basically what happens is there's a certain amount of, in this PKU, there's a certain amount of chemicals in the body that regulate things, and they get out of order. So in PKU, you just need to know that it's a metabolic disorder that left untreated causes mental retardation. So we check for that in babies. And then we have sickle cell anemia. That's a blood disorder that limits the body's oxygen supply. And so what happens is the blood cells, when it limits the body's oxygen, the blood cells are not round and full. Instead, they're about half, like a sickle, like a half moon. And that causes heart and kidney failure. Then we have spinal bifida. And this is where the brain that leads into the spinal cord doesn't fully develop, and that spinal cord doesn't develop all the way. And that's called spinal bifida. And so those are some of the genetic disorders that we need to take a look at. Now we're going to move on. Okay, we're going to move on. We talked about we're talking about some genetic things. Okay, so here we go. So now we're going to talk about, okay, this is heredity and environment correlation. Okay, the combination between genetics and environment. Remember, that's kind of how this whole unit began. We were talking about individual, what we need to do with environment. Okay, so now we kind of hit on the genetics. Okay, so when we say heredity, environmental correlation, if it's passive, okay, if it's passive, children inherit genetic tendencies from their parents, and the parents also provide an environment that matches their own genetic tendencies. Okay, so this is really important. All right, so let's say that a parent is bipolar, has extremes of really being hyper and productive, and then really extremes of being really lethargic and non-productive. So if it's called passive, okay, hereditary environment, then passive means that the children inherit the trait and the parent also models the trait. So in passive, we're getting the trait and we're getting the environment for that trait. Okay, so once again, let me read that again. Passive, children inherit the genetic tendencies from their parents, and the parents also provide an environment that matches their own genetic tendencies. Now, let's do all three of these and then we'll come back and talk. You can see where we're going with this. We're going with this, if the parents have been able to adapt for genetic tendencies that are a problem, then the child could see from the parent how to model and how to adapt and maybe be able to live with that genetic tendency. Okay, what does passive mean? Passive means you don't do anything. Okay, passive. Somebody that's passive doesn't, you know, if you're passive in a fight, then you don't do anything. So passive means somebody with the genetic tendencies, they don't do anything. They just accept those tendencies and they just pass them on to their children. And I don't want to say they're a victim. I don't want to say that, but you can see where I'm going with that. They don't show their children how to maybe live with that. Okay. So then we have the next one. Okay. Evocative, E-V-O-C-A-T-I-V-E. Okay. Now this is the child's genetics tendencies elicit stimulation from the environment that supports a particular trait. Thus, the genes evoke environmental support. Okay, so evocative means that the child has these genetic tendencies, whatever they are. All right, but the environment has taught them how to live with that. Okay, so once again, when they say the genes invoke environmental support, that's why it gets the name evocative. So that means the person has the genetic traits. All right. Now, once again, what were we saying earlier in the beginning of these videos? That environment is even more critical unless you have some of those major disorders that the 10% that you can't overcome. So this is evocative. So yes, we have these traits, but the environment is teaching us to live past that. Okay. So, and we all have situations where this causes a child to be a happy, normal, functioning person, even though they have the genetic traits. So this is now more of what you as millennials, this is more what your society is doing. The baby boomers, when they had this, they were like, oh, I hate that my child has this, I hate that, or whatever. But they're just going to have to live with it. We've got it, and we feel sorry for them. But then this millennial generation is kind of like, okay, well, yeah, so we got that. Okay, so how are we gonna teach them to get by with that? How can we live and be a happy individual and still have that? And then the last one, okay, is called active. Okay, children actively seek out niches, okay, in their environment that reflect their own interests and talents, and thus in accordance with their genotype. Okay, so active is called niche picking. Okay, what's the niche? The niche is the area where you pick. A niche is what you're going to do for a living. A niche is where you're going to live. A niche is where you're going to select. Well, back before the baby boomers and we had the Depression generation, you didn't move around. You lived here. People began to move a little bit because they had to have jobs, but you didn't move around. You didn't change. Whatever your lot in life was, that's what you had. So there's your lot in life. In the baby boomers, it's like, yeah, this is your lot in life, but you got to just deal with it, okay? And yeah, we hate that happen. But now we have this active form, okay? We have this active form where we say, okay, so if you've got this, okay, then what's going to be? So we start looking and say, okay, you got this genetic disorder. What's going to, and I'm going to use Down syndrome, okay? Because now we say, okay, so my child has Down syndrome. So what can they do? Oh, well, they can be they can be a stalker at a grocery store. We know that's going to work. Okay, well, are they going to be better in a small town, big city? Where are they going to live? What school do they need to go to? Okay, now remember the baby boomers, they kind of felt sorry for things and everything, but before that, everybody was like, no, you just adapt or you don't make it. You just don't make it. The baby boomers were accepting of the people with the genetic disorders, whereas earlier it was like, well, that person's just, they're just mentally retarded. They're just mentally retarded. They'll never amount to anything. We can't do anything. We just have to put them on we just have to just kind of ignore them. Okay. Baby boomers, yeah, we really have, we have sympathy for them. We feel really bad, but we're going, now millennials, it's like, okay, so now let's not only see what they need to do, let's pick this out early, and let's get them the kind of education they're going to need. Let's decide what kind of job they're going to have. Let's decide where they're going to live. Let's say, okay, and what kind of relationships you're going to have. Do you need to live close to your parents? Do you need to live what you need? So that's called active. So once again, what is this? This is heredity-environment correlation. Heredity-environment correlation. What is passive? Passive is where we have the genetic disorder, and then we just go on and we don't do anything. Passive means we don't do anything. The person has a genetic disorder, and then they show the environment for that disorder, that they live that out their whole life, and their kids live that out their whole life. Then evocative means that they have the disorder, but the environment can overcome that. Okay, we try to teach them with the environment how to overcome it. What is active? Active is when we have the disorder, and then we pick our niche. Then we begin to develop life around our disorder so that it works. Okay, so let's see, how much time do we have left there? Okay, let me cover one more thing on this video. All right, let me cover one more thing. So I've got let's do this, and I want to share this. This is something that it comes up a lot of times in prenatal. Okay, so it's so important. Okay, we talk about all these genetic effects and all these environmental effects, and and let's talk about millennials. Okay, let's talk about this generation. We know now that you're like, how could we not know that? How could we not know that smoking, was bad for a baby? How could we not know that? How could we not know that drinking was bad for a baby? In the 60s, we had these crack babies where mothers were using even crack cocaine while they, and didn't know they were pregnant. That's usually what happened. But so now we're like, okay, so now the minute that somebody finds out they're pregnant, or they're trying to get pregnant, or they suspect they're pregnant, they change their lifestyle, and they quit smoking, and they quit drinking, and different things. So let's talk about the different nutrients that you have to have when you're pregnant. This is really interesting. We're going to talk about this, and in America, we really deal with this. But what happens in these other countries when they don't even have enough of the nutrients, and in a country that doesn't even produce enough food, okay, let alone have a prenatal vitamin, okay? So we're going to give you some of the top ones that make a difference here in prenatal and for the infant here, okay? Iron. You have to have between 300 and 400% more iron than your regular dosage, than what you get in your regular food. So in a prenatal vitamin, it's 300 to 400% more per day of what we need. In vitamin D, we need 2 times. We need 100% more. Okay. Folic acid, okay, we need 2 times more. Protein, we need 68% more. Calcium, we need 50% more. Why is that? Because we're making bones, making a new body in there. Okay. Phosphorus, we need 50% for. Magnesium, 50% more. Okay. And so those are the ones those are the big ones. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now I'm going to give you some of these others, but on your I want you to really know that iron, you need 300 to 400% more. You need twice as much vitamin D, twice as much folic acid. You need 60